In a small Texas town, a poor mechanic's simple act of kindness changes lives forever. When a billionaire's jet makes an emergency landing, he meets her disabled daughter. And what happens next will bring you to tears. This is a story of hope, humanity, and a miracle that proves one good heart can change the world. So sit back, watch till the end, and feel the power of kindness. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. In a quiet small town of Texas, USA, where the roads were lined with old oak trees, and life moved slowly, there lived a poor but kind-hearted mechanic named Jake Miller. His workshop sat at the edge of town, a little place made of rusted tin sheets, a squeaky door, and an old signboard that read, "Jake's Auto Care, Fixing with Heart." Jake wasn't rich, but he had golden hands and an even bigger heart. Every day, he worked long hours repairing trucks, bikes, and old sedans, just to earn enough to pay rent and buy food. Despite his struggles, he always greeted everyone with a smile. One warm summer morning, as Jake was tightening a bolt on a pickup truck, he heard the sound of a luxury engine pulling up outside. He looked up and froze. A sleek, black Rolls-Royce had stopped right in front of his humble garage. It was a rare sight in this small town. From the back seat stepped out a woman in her mid-40s, wearing an elegant white suit and diamond earrings that sparkled in the sunlight. She was clearly from a different world, polished, confident, and wealthy. But Jake noticed something else too, worry in her eyes. A moment later, he saw why. From the car's back door, a young girl, maybe 10 years old, with soft blonde hair and bright blue eyes, was gently lifted out by a nurse. She sat in a wheelchair, her legs motionless. Jake immediately set his tools aside and walked over, wiping his greasy hands on his rag. "Ma'am, need some help?" he asked politely. The woman nodded nervously. "Yes, please. Our car broke down, and my daughter's wheelchair is also damaged. We were flying from New York to Los Angeles, but our private jet had to make an emergency landing nearby. We can't move her without the chair." Jake bent down beside the girl, smiling kindly. "Hey there, young lady. I'm Jake. What's your name?" The girl hesitated before replying softly, "Emily." Her voice was gentle but filled with sadness. Jake inspected the wheelchair and saw that its right wheel was completely bent and the motor mechanism was jammed. "Don't worry," he said with confidence. "I'll fix this for you." Mrs. Williams, the billionaire mother, looked uncertain. "You don't need to bother. It's a special model. Expensive, imported. I'll call for help." But Jake shook his head. "No need, ma'am. A broken wheel doesn't care about the price tag. Give me a few hours." There was something about the mechanic's simple words that calmed her. While Jake worked, Emily sat nearby watching him. His hands were rough and covered in oil, yet he worked with the care of an artist, making sure every part fit perfectly. Occasionally, he would glance at Emily and give her a wink or a playful grin. "You know," he said, "machines are like people. Sometimes they just need someone to believe they can work again." Emily smiled shyly for the first time that day. Jake noticed the small dimples on her cheeks and felt his heart warm. For hours, he welded, adjusted, and polished the chair using old tools and spare parts from junk cars. He didn't care that this job wouldn't make him money. He only cared that this little girl could smile again. The townspeople passed by curiously, wondering why a millionaire's car was parked outside Jake's shabby garage, but Jake paid no attention. By sunset, the work was done. He carefully pushed the repaired wheelchair toward Emily and said softly, "All right, princess, give it a try." Mrs. Williams and the nurse helped Emily sit in it. Jake knelt down beside her, adjusted a small bolt, and looked up expectantly. Emily pushed the control stick, and to everyone's surprise, the chair moved smoothly. The girl gasped, her eyes wide with joy. "Mom, it's working!" she shouted, her laughter echoing in the garage. Mrs. Williams covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes as she saw her daughter's happiness. Jake smiled proudly, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Told you we could make it work," he said humbly. Mrs. Williams stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, how much do I owe you?" Jake shook his head. "Nothing, ma'am. She paid me already," with that smile. Mrs. Williams was stunned. She had met countless businessmen, engineers and professionals, but never someone who valued kindness over money. She stood there speechless, watching this poor mechanic pack away his tools, his clothes stained with oil, but his spirit shining brighter than gold. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the small workshop, Emily waved goodbye. "Thank you, Jake," she said happily. Jake waved back, smiling, though his eyes were a little misty. When the Rolls-Royce finally drove away, Jake sat on his wooden stool and sighed deeply. He didn't know that the small act of kindness he did that day would soon change his life forever. For him, it was just another good deed, but for the billionaire mother and her daughter, it was a moment they would never forget. The next morning, the town was still buzzing with whispers about the mysterious luxury car that had stopped at Jake's garage the day before. People talked about how a poor mechanic had helped a billionaire woman and her disabled daughter without taking a single dollar. But for Jake, life went on as usual. He returned to his workshop early, working on an old pickup truck, when he suddenly heard the same smooth engine purr outside again. He looked up surprised as the same black Rolls-Royce pulled in. This time Mrs. Williams stepped out smiling, holding her daughter Emily's hand. The sight made Jake blink in shock. Emily wasn't in the wheelchair. She was standing, supported, lightly by a small walking aid, her face glowing with happiness. "Jake!" she called out in her sweet voice, running as best as she could toward him. Jake quickly set his wrench down and knelt to catch her. "Well, look at you," he said warmly. "Standing tall already?" Mrs. Williams explained that the moment they reached the hospital after he fixed the chair, Emily had been so motivated that she started trying to move her legs again. The doctors said her improvement was remarkable. Something about the confidence and excitement had helped her muscles respond. Jake was speechless, looking at the little girl who had once sat helplessly in a broken wheelchair, now taking small but brave steps. "You did this, Jake," Mrs. Williams said emotionally. "You gave her hope when I had almost given up." Jake scratched his head awkwardly, trying to hide the emotion in his eyes. "Nah, ma'am, that was all her. She just needed someone to believe in her, same as all machines, remember?" Emily giggled, repeating his line, and the sound filled the garage like sunlight. Then Mrs. Williams noticed something new. The wheelchair Jake had repaired wasn't just working perfectly, it had something extra. "Jake, what's this button?" she asked curiously. Jake smiled modestly. "Oh, that's a small electric assist I built in from spare bike parts. Makes it easier for her to move uphill or when she's tired. It's not much, but it might help." Mrs. Williams was speechless. That feature was found only in top-end imported models worth over $20,000. She realized this man, with no formal education and limited tools, had done something brilliant, and he did it without expecting anything in return. Emily couldn't stop laughing and showing off the new speed of her wheelchair, moving in smooth circles around the garage. "Look, Mom, it feels like I'm flying," she shouted joyfully. Jake chuckled. "Careful there, pilot. Don't take off too fast." Mrs. Williams wiped tears from her cheeks, her heart swelling with gratitude. In her entire life filled with money, mansions, and business empires, she had never met someone so humble and pure-hearted. Jake didn't even know who she was. One of the richest women in America, owner of Williams Industries, a billion-dollar company. Yet he treated her and her daughter like ordinary people, with respect and kindness. As the day went on, Jake made them coffee, and they sat together in the tiny garage office, talking about life. Emily asked him endless questions about engines, gears, and how machines worked, and Jake answered each one patiently, drawing small sketches on a napkin to explain. Mrs. Williams watched silently, her heart melting at the sight of her daughter smiling so freely. It was the happiest she had seen Emily in years. Before leaving, Mrs. Williams said softly, "Jake, do you know who I am?" Jake shook his head casually. "Doesn't matter to me, ma'am. You're just a mom who loves her kid. That's enough." That line hit her harder than she expected. All her life, people had treated her like a business deal, a bank account. But this poor man saw her as a human being. As she and Emily drove away, Jake went back to work, humming to himself, unaware that his simple words had touched something deep inside her. That night, in her luxury penthouse in Dallas, Mrs. Williams couldn't stop thinking about the mechanic, with the kind smile and the rusty garage that somehow felt warmer than her entire mansion. She looked at Emily sleeping peacefully and realized that money could buy comfort, but not kindness. She opened her laptop and started writing an email to her company's board, making arrangements for something special. Meanwhile, Jake, in his small rented room above the garage, had dinner made of beans and bread. He didn't have much, but he was content. He sat by the window, looking at the stars, thinking of Emily's laughter echoing through his garage. It made him feel like, for once, his work truly mattered. He didn't know that the next morning would change his life in ways he could never imagine. As the night wind blew through the town, carrying the faint scent of oil and metal from his workshop, Jake closed his eyes with a smile. Somewhere in the city, a billionaire mother was planning to repay his kindness, not with money, but with something that would change his destiny forever. A week had passed since Jake had last seen Mrs. Williams and her daughter Emily, and life had gone back to its usual rhythm in his small Texas town. He worked hard every day, fixing cars, bikes, and old trucks for his regular customers, completely unaware that his simple act of kindness was about to bring the biggest change of his life. It was a warm Saturday morning when Jake heard an unusual noise outside his garage, not the rumble of an old pickup truck or the honk of a local farmer's van, but the deep, smooth hum of several luxury vehicles arriving at once. He wiped his hands with his rag and stepped out, squinting against the sun. To his astonishment, 3 black SUVs and a white limousine were parked in front of his small workshop. People from around the neighborhood began to gather, whispering in curiosity. From the limousine stepped out Mrs. Williams, dressed elegantly, yet smiling warmly, holding Emily's hand. Behind them followed a few men in suits carrying cameras, microphones, and boxes. "Morning, Jake," Mrs. Williams greeted, her eyes shining. "Hope we're not disturbing your work." Jake, still in shock, laughed nervously. "Ma'am, this looks more like a parade than a visit." Mrs. Williams chuckled softly. "Well, you could say that. We're here to make an announcement." Jake looked confused as the men set up a small banner that read, "Williams Industries Community Initiative, Changing Lives Through Kindness." Reporters started taking photos, and Jake's heart began to pound. "Ma'am, I don't understand," he said. "What's going on?" Mrs. Williams stepped closer and held his grease-stained hand gently. "Jake, do you remember what you told me? That sometimes machines, like people, just need someone to believe they can work again." Jake nodded slowly, unsure of where this was going. "Well," she continued with a trembling voice, "you didn't just fix a wheelchair that day. You fixed something much bigger. You gave hope to my daughter and reminded me what kindness truly means." Emily, who was now walking on her own with the help of lightweight braces, smiled proudly at Jake. "I told Mom we should come back and help you like you helped me," she said joyfully. Jake's eyes softened as he knelt beside her. "You're walking, sweetheart. Look at you go." Emily giggled and hugged him tightly. "You're my hero, Jake," she whispered. The crowd around them sighed emotionally, watching the touching moment. Then Mrs. Williams raised her hand to quiet the murmuring crowd. "Jake Miller," she announced, "because of your kindness, dedication, and heart, I've decided to start a new program in your name, the Jake Miller Foundation, to help disabled children across America receive affordable, customized wheelchairs built with love, just like the one you repaired for Emily. The crowd erupted in applause. Jake stood frozen, unable to process what he had just heard. I don't know what to say, he stammered. You don't have to say anything, Mrs. Williams replied warmly. Just keep being you. She motioned for her assistant, who brought forward a large envelope and a set of shiny keys. This, she said, handing it to Jake, is the deed to a brand new auto workshop located downtown. Fully equipped, paid for, and registered in your name. It's 10 times bigger than this one, with everything you'll ever need to build and design wheelchairs or repair vehicles. Jake stared at the papers in disbelief, tears welling in his eyes. Ma'am, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, she interrupted gently. Because you earned it not with money, but with heart. This is your reward for being the kind of person the world desperately needs. Emily ran to him again, holding a small silver badge engraved with the words, Built with Heart, Jake Miller. She pinned it on his shirt and said proudly, Now everyone will know who fixed me. Jake couldn't hold back anymore. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he hugged the little girl tightly. The cameras flashed, capturing the moment that would soon spread across news channels and social media nationwide. Reporters rushed forward asking questions, but Jake's voice broke as he tried to speak. I just did what anyone should do. Help when you can, he said humbly. Mrs. Williams smiled proudly. And that's exactly why we're here, Jake. You reminded all of us that humanity still exists, even in a small garage like this. As the ceremony continued, one of her assistants opened a large tarp beside the road, revealing a brand new luxury van with a custom logo, Miller Mobility, Hope on Wheels. It was the first vehicle of the Foundation's fleet, designed to deliver wheelchairs to children in need across the country. The crowd clapped loudly as Mrs. Williams invited Jake to sit inside it. You'll be leading this, Jake, she said. Your knowledge, your heart, that's what this mission is built on. Jake sat silently, overwhelmed by emotion. He thought of all the nights he'd gone hungry, all the struggles he had faced just to keep his tiny garage alive, and now here he was, being celebrated by the world. The same hands that once fixed broken cars were now being trusted to build hope. As the event ended, Mrs. Williams and Emily stayed behind for a quiet moment. Emily looked up at Jake and said softly, When I grow up, I want to be like you. Jake smiled, wiping his tears. No, sweetheart. Be better than me. Mrs. Williams placed her hand on his shoulder. Jake, you've changed our lives. I'll never forget that. She turned to leave, but before stepping into her car, she said with a warm smile, Sometimes angels don't have wings. Sometimes they just wear grease-stained shirts. Jake laughed through his tears, watching them drive away, feeling the weight of gratitude in his chest. The sun was setting again, casting a golden glow over his little garage one last time. He looked at the keys in his hand, then at the sky, whispering to himself, Guess miracles do happen. That evening, Jake locked up his old shop and walked down the dusty road toward his new beginning. Behind him, the townspeople clapped and cheered, shouting his name. For the first time in his life, Jake realized that kindness truly does come back, sometimes not in the way you expect, but in the way you deserve. And as the stars appeared over the quiet Texas sky, the poor mechanic who once fixed broken machines had now fixed countless hearts, proving that one good deed really can change the world.